What's up, everybody? Just checking out the connections here. How's everybody doing tonight? All right, cool. So my name is Cooper Anderson, and I'm here with Creating the Sound. Tonight we have the Root Down Drums by Jimmy Smith, and also sampled, as I know it, by the Beastie Boys. And so Dylan recorded these drums and sent them over, and we're gonna mix them. So let me show you what we got going on here. So I haven't really done too much to it yet. I just kind of put it in a Pro Tools session. I'm going to use Pro Tools tonight. So I'm just going to, I guess, start with my prep. I already kind of organized them the way I like, but let's do some colors on here. So I like to do kicks as dark blue. The visual organization just makes it super easy to tell what you're looking at quickly. So I have my snares as like a light blue. The rest of the main drums is green. And then these are like more of like room and ambience mics, so we'll do those a different green. Also, be sure to drop any questions you have in the chat. Oh, can we not see the screen? Oh, there we go. How's this? Shout out to Dylan for monitoring the feed. This is our first one, so definitely give us some feedback here. Okay, cool. So we have the colors all set. All these tracks are mono, so we don't really need to worry about mono and stereo. And let's just zoom way in and check to make sure everything looks like it's pretty phase aligned. I already ran these through auto align before. I just don't have it on this computer, so that's why I didn't do it live, but I'm trying to focus more on the actual balancing today and the prep. Okay, so these are the one shots over here. This stuff here is going to be the main loop. Let's just take a listen to all the tracks and hear what we're working with. Make sure my speakers are... Okay, cool. So that's the whole performance. Not too long, just a quick 30 seconds or so. And I guess we'll just loop a section and start building up a mix here. Oh, before we do that, it's always good to find the tempo. I mean, it's not super necessary in this particular application, but it's a good trick to know. So the way I like to do it in Pro Tools is I'll find where the one is, so we'll just listen to the beat. It might be this first kick right here. That's my guess, but let's just listen. I couldn't tell where the 1 is, but I know this is definitely either a 2 or a 4, these main snare hits. I think that's a 2. So let's call this a 2. And the way we set that on the computer is you click this little tab to transients, and then we'll tab right up to it using our focus mode keys, and then we'll hold shift and tab to the next transient, which is the 4, and then we hit Command I, and then we make sure this is on a 2, and then this would be on a 4. So the first snare is going to be bar 2, beat 2, and the next one's bar 2, beat 4. It doesn't really matter. We'll adjust it, the exact location. This might be further than 2 bars in, but we'll use this measurement to figure out the tempo, or the ballpark tempo. And that says it's about 103.74. So I like to round up, especially on non-quantized stuff. So let's just try 104, and we'll see how that's looking. So I erased that, and I put this new tempo marker right at the beginning. And that's at 104. Now I have my nudge set to 1 bar, and I'm just going to zoom way in, and I'm going to hold nudge so I can see the hits kind of moving as I nudge. And it's not really working the way it's supposed to. So we might be on the wrong tempo. Let's slip these snares over to a bar line. Okay, so now I have, let's get the main 2 and 4 snares right on a bar line. So this one looks like a 2 and a 4. So when I zoom way in, I can see the drums are kind of drifting this way. It's hard to see on this particular example, but when you zoom very fast, you can see the hits kind of drifting to the right across the screen, which means that our tempo is going by too quickly. So that means it's too fast. So let's try a 103, and it might be a 103.5, because remember it was 103.75 just about. And that's going even faster. It's a little more in the pocket. Again, it's hard to tell with unquantized drums exactly where it is. Let's try 103.5. Let's just hear it with the click and see how that's lining up for us. So maybe let's try 103 and see how that click works. All right, so that means it's a little too fast because see they're drifting to the right. See this one is right on, and then as you get further down the line, they're further away from the bar line. So let's try a 102. All right, that sounds like it's on the click now. Cool. So let's make sure the actual 1 comes on a downbeat on the grid. So this is a 2, so let's just slide that over to the 2. One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. That's right on the click now. Perfect. So we have our 1 bar of lead in, and now we're all lined up. So the first thing I like to do for balancing, I mean, we're just doing a mix of a drum kit. So let's, any mix, I like to approach it with the faders completely down and just start to like build the mix from scratch. But what's really important for me too is the references. So in this case, we're trying to recreate the original root down sound. Now, since we're live streaming, I can't actually play that. But I have prepared the drums only from the Jimmy Smith and from the Beastie Boys version. So I'm just going to play it for a quick second. Just so we can hear it quickly. This is a fair use version right here. All right, that's in the fill. Okay, cool. So they sound like really live. I mean, it was a live performance that it was sampled from. And it's got kind of a big, like, vintage, like, punchy, little bit of compression type of sound. So I'm just going to keep that in mind while we're mixing. And now let's take all the faders down. Sometimes I'll use my iPad app for this, but a quick way to do it also is you can just select the all group and just drag everything down. And we don't need this click. We can put that over here by the reference track. What do I have to my colors? All right. Cool. So let's just mix these together. I'm going to start with the kicks. Now I'm mixing on headphones just for the purpose of the presentation, but speakers are nice too. Just got to turn my headphones up a little bit. Just makes it sound better on the stream if there's not feedback going into my mic. So that's the kick, Telefunken M82. It's got kind of a snap. That's like a snappy punch mic. So let's mute that and hear our other mics. That's kind of woofy and bassy. Okay, that's fat head. And then this last one's a sub kick. That's even woofier and bassier. Not so much woofy, just sub. Okay, cool. So I'm just trying to envision how we're going to blend these 3 together. I think a lot of it's going to come from the M82, a lot of the sound. So let's make that kind of our main sound. I'm a big fan of the Sonox drum gate. It's a new year. I'm trying to keep it simple with the plugins. I know I have a lot, but trying to narrow it down to the ones I really need this year. And I would say Oxford is one of them, especially for mixing live drums. So I just set it to kick, and that looks like it's pretty much getting all the kick hits. And now that it's gated out, we can put compression on it to level out the sound a little bit more, and it won't bring up the bleed from the other drums. So let's just try a light 1176. Just to give it a little more snap. Which one should I do? How about the CLA? Can't go wrong, right? The waves. Nice. Well, that definitely made it louder. Louder's better, right? The CLA setting for drums is the attack on 3 and the release on 7. So that's like a kind of medium slow attack, which will let the transient go through, and a fast release, so once it gets back above the threshold, the compressor shuts right off. So it's just a quick leveling, and since we raised up the input gain, that's going to raise the overall volume. So that's nice for the snap. Now let's add in some of these woofy bottom ones. See, these, it kind of makes it a little less punchy because they're so like sustained. Let's try the sub kick. I almost like the sub kick a little better. I might even just go with those two. Let's try the drum gate on the sub kick. Oh yeah, that's punchy. Let's copy our 1176 over too. That's nice. Can bring that down a little bit. Yeah, it's got some solid low end now. It's a nice amount of snap. Let's see if we can find some more mid-range in this one. Maybe if we filter out some of the lows so we're not competing with the sub kick on this one. Fab Filter Pro Q3 is pretty much the Swiss Army knife of EQs. Definitely recommend this one. This is a desert island one, if you will. Trying to find a nice mid frequency to boost. I think we can even throw the drum gate on this as well. Let's hear that with the other two. Yeah, it gives it a little more body. I think we got to raise our threshold on the gate a little bit here. I was getting a little of those snare ghost notes. Still a little bit in there. All right, cool. So that's our kick. Let's see what we got for the snare. It's a really pingy snare. Let's find a section that's a little more groove and a little less fill to loop. I want to get the processing for like the main snare together. Just trying to go like just some basic like compression and gating stuff to get the main spot mics in shape before we do a full blend of the kit. So let's try a drum gate on this one. There's a lot of ghost notes on here, so I don't know how well. I mean, the Oxford does really well with those, but it still might be a lot. So that's the leveler. I was messing around with it, but then I auto set it. I think that's pretty nice. Brings the ghost notes out a little more. Here's without it. There's a lot more hi-hat in there. It's much cleaner with the gate. And remember, these are like spot mics too, so this is to get more of the punch from the drums. Get our kick snare balance well. Bring some of the snare bottom in. So the snare top is an M80 Telefunken, and the snare bottom is the classic Shure SM57. We'll probably need some EQ on the snare, but I'm going to wait till we get more of the full kit together. Alright, I'm liking the kick sound. The snare, I feel like, is not quite there yet. But let's pull up our overheads and see how we're looking with these. Sounds like some ring from the tom or something in there. I just panned them out hard left and right to hear what it sounds like. Sounds like the snare is pretty centered in the image. That's really what I'm looking for. You know, the overheads, I try to think of it as like a camera, you know, kind of looking at the kit. And if I shut my eyes, I want to like envision it, and I want to hear the snare in the middle, just typically. So that's what I'm looking for. If I hear just the overheads panned out, I want to hear the snare kind of focused in the middle, and then the width comes from the rest of the drums. Kick in the snare, but we're not really looking for too much kick in the overheads. So let's hear this. See, it's more the mid-range of the kick. It's sounding like drummer perspective. The hi-hats on the left. So I get asked this question a lot, like, do you want to treat a stereo pair like this as two monos or as a stereo? And for me, it really depends. I think if the two individual tracks work together, like we have it here with the faders at 0 and the pans hard left and right, then you can put it as a stereo, and it's actually easier because you'll only have one plugin that's processing both of them instead of two plugins, and then you have to group them together, and it gets a little more complicated unnecessarily. So let's do that. Let's put these together on one stereo track. And let's color that green. All right. I do kind of want to hear it with all those cymbals in there. I want to make sure when we process these that they're not going to be too washy. I think I'm going to look for some frequencies to notch out. It's sounding a little like almost a little too harsh and bright in the upper mid-range frequencies. So let's pull up a fab filter and try and notch some stuff out, maybe cut some of the lows too. It's not really much down there, but it never hurts to cut the sub frequencies when you don't need them. Ooh, there's a lot of harshness right there. Cut that right down, widen the cue a little bit. Let's hear it bypassed. Might even just shelf the whole thing down a little bit. Just see what that does. Those toms are sounding pretty good in the overheads too. That sounded pretty good and balanced. Still maybe thinking there's a little too much up in here. Okay, cool. Let's hear that blends with our kick and snare. It's pretty good. These are the mics that I'm gonna want to try and use to get most of the drum kit. So that's the kick mics, the snare mics, and the overheads. We want to get the bulk of the sound between these three mics. That's why I'm spending so much time zooming in on these. So I really like the kick sound. I think that's slamming. I think the snare could use a little more body. So I think what I'm going to do is aux these together. There might be a quicker way to do this now, but I'm doing it the old-fashioned way. I just put them both on a bus. Solo isolate that. Snare aux. And let's try compressing both of these. Let's just throw our CLA 76 on there. It's nice. Definitely makes that a little more punchy. Let's try some EQ on that too. Maybe boost up some of the bottoms. I'm just going to keep it simple. You know, we've been using Fab Filter. Let's just keep using that one. There's a high-pitched part of that ring. I might want to bring some of that down on the snare. Yeah, it's right around there, 1490. Or let's try an octave up, would be just about 3K. I think 1490 is better. That's with it out. Definitely helps it quite a bit. Let's give it a little more boost A little more bass boost. And then a little more bite. A little more top maybe too. Still getting a little of that ring, but that's okay. Here we can try a dynamic EQ. Trying to not mess with the phase of this sound too much. It almost sounds like feedback when we bypass it now. All right, let's just take a quick listen to the reference again. I want to hear how balanced the kick and snare are with the cymbals and stuff. So let's just take a listen. There we go. So actually the cymbals and the percussion are kind of a little bit louder than the kick and the snare. Now, of course, this is heavily processed because of the way that I ran it through Isotope RX 8 to isolate the drums. So you're going to hear some of that overwaterness that's going to bring out some of the harshness of the cymbals. But I believe that it was that way in the original recording anyway. All right, so let's hear what we have. All right, let's bring in the close mics on the toms. I'm not even really sure if we need much of the hi-hat mic. I'm hearing quite a bit of hi-hat in the overheads, but let's work on the toms first. So let's just loop a section with some tom fills. We can either manually gate these or we can just try with the Sonox real quick. I'm always about trying anything if it's real quick. That looks pretty good. Need a little more decay on the low one. Getting a lot of the sound from the overheads. The spot mics are reinforcing the bass, especially on that floor tom, but it's not really doing much for the rack mount. Here, let's EQ a little more snap into that rack mount. All right, that's good for now. Let's just hear what our hi-hat mic sounds like. Like I said, I don't think we'll need too much of it, but it might be good to bring some of the body in. Yeah, we would definitely need to filter this out. Let's just try a little bit of that in there. There's without it. And with it. I don't know, it's kind of almost doing like a weird phasey thing. I'm not sure if I love it. I think we'll leave that out for now. Let's see what our room mics will bring us. All right, so we have these overheads. We have some ribbon overheads. We have 2 room mics. We have a front of kit, hall mic, kit crush, and shotgun. So let's just take a quick listen to all these. Let's start with the ribbons. This is the L&R pair. This one, it sounds like it's pulling a little to the left. Could just be the hi-hat, but I'm feeling ever so slightly pulled to the left. But I think we can still put this on a stereo track and then just use the BX Control plugin to adjust the stereo image. Let's take a listen to the rooms before we do that, though. This is a left-right room pair. Definitely nice. All right, cool. So we'll put both of those on stereo tracks. Make 2 stereo. And we will drag these down onto the stereo tracks. So we've got OH ribbon, and room. And then we can delete the mono tracks. Let's get our colors. So that's the OH ribbon overheads. Let's just throw a BX Control on there. So this plugin's great for adjusting the stereo image. I'm going to first use the mono maker to bring everything below 349 Hertz into mono. So that'll get all our low frequency stuff monoed out. See how that's doing for a stereo image. It already tightens it up quite a bit. You can even see on the balance, we're pretty much in the center. See, it's almost pulling to the right now that when I turn it off. Maybe it's just that section. Adjust the balance just a little bit to the left. And then let's hear if we crank the width, what that does. I think that's a much more concise image. This is what it was before, and this is with this thing on. So this is just like the full ribbon, and we've actually widened it now, but it makes it a more like full image. So let's blend that into our full kit. Let's get rid of this room because we haven't worked on this one yet. It's nice, it gives it like some extra ambience. It's not bringing out any particular frequencies, so I actually want to filter it out so we're not just like masking other stuff, because if we have other mics that are already producing those frequencies, and then we add more with different mics that we don't really need, then you're just going to add frequencies together. And when you do that with a bunch of live mics, you run into potential phase issues. So let's see. We can get rid of a lot of the low end on this. I do like the lower mids though, so let's boost those up a little bit. And some of this top end can go. Definitely don't want those cymbals very washy. Let's hear how that blends in. Just without it, and there's with it. Yeah, it's subtle. I think it gives the whole thing a little more energy. So let's hear the room. I think this will be helpful if we do like the compressed, go for like the compressed room sound with this. So let's hear that. Let's try, what kind of compressor should we use? Let's see. So many plugins. So many plugins. Let's try the SSL. Set the attack to 30. That'll let some transients go through. Put release fast. Very similar to our CLA setting. You can turn up the input gain some so we can hit it a little harder. Try the different knee. I think it was better on 0 knee. I'm not exactly sure how this low bleed thing works on this plugin, but it sounds really cool. It definitely kind of like smooths things out. I'm sure there's YouTube videos about it, but so far all I've done is just play with the knobs. Sometimes you can't go wrong with that. One thing that's super important on any plugin is to always A/B it to make sure you're improving the sound. So let's try that. Here's without it. Definitely louder. Louder's better, right? Let's see where our peak's going in. Around -15, maybe a little higher. And going out, they're below -21. But bypassed, it sounds quieter. But none of that matters in solo. Let's hear how it sounds in the track. There's without it. There's with it. Yeah. Now, of course, part of the problem, you know, we're trying to like recreate a vintage recording with like these super clean, modern digital mics. So that's, you know, one of the things that makes it vintage is the imperfections of the gear that they had back then. So we might have to add some like lo-fi effects on this to really get that sound. Let's hear these other room mics, although I'm pretty satisfied so far with what we've got. So let's hear if these last few ambience mics add anything. Okay. Ooh, we might need some of that. There's definitely a lot of reverb in the original. Crunch. I don't know how much of this we're going to need. It's pretty washy of the cymbals. I liked the crunch in the hall. So let's hear the crunch in the track a little bit. I think we're going to have to filter that out as well. Trying to make sure it doesn't get overly washy with those cymbals. It sounds weird, but it might be cool, like, in the track. Let's hear it. I like it. Glues it together. All right, let's hear this hall mic. That's great. Definitely need to get rid of some of that sub low end. We could probably throw a CLA on this one too. CLA 76. Let's hear that in the track. Yeah, it's nice. I like that ambience. All right, let's take a listen to the reference again. Yeah, it might be even like a whole drum track reverb. Yes, and please, if anyone watching has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Let's try some reverb on the toms. You can't go wrong with thundering toms. We can get rid of the click. Let's see. So let's put a reverb aux down here. Let's just try. What's a reverb that everybody has? How about reverb 1? That comes with Pro Tools if you have the subscription, I believe. So let's put that on bus 1 and 2. And then we'll send our snare aux to bus 1 and 2. Cool. Although I meant to do the toms. So I sent a bunch of stuff into there. I got the overheads, the toms, and the snare. And then I just lowered the level of it a little bit. I'm going to actually EQ the return as well. Maybe get a little less of the snare body and the lower mids in there, because we did kind of boost those in the overheads. So I want to make sure we leave room for it. Get more of that ambience, the reverb. I'm going to pull up a master fader so we can see where our levels are at overall. Throw EQ on it just to see frequency wise what we're looking at. Looks pretty well balanced. One thing I would like to try is running some match EQ from the root down drums isolated. Even though it's not like the greatest sound, I just want to see what happens when we run that the isolated drums into the sidechain of this EQ that's on everything. So let's throw that on a bus. Let's just do 21. And then we'll put this to bus 21. Pre-fader send. Turn that all the way down. Let's just drag these over so we can loop them at the same time. And then the EQ match feature is right down here. So I set my buses. So I have the pre-fader send coming from my source. Well, not my source, my sidechain source. So this is what I'm trying to emulate with the EQ curve. And then the main EQ, it's actually on the master fader right now, or you could do it on a drum subgroup. Since this is just this one session, I'm just going to do it on the master. I mean, this is the one thing in the session. So then you go here to EQ match under the analyzer. And then we're going to put, for the reference, the external sidechain. And then we're going to hit input record. So that's tracking in some of the input. And then we're going to record some of the sidechain in. And then we're going to match that. Woo! Certainly made it a lot louder. Let's see if we can drag all these down a little bit. Let's Let's just put a gain plugin before it. I mean a trim plugin to lower this down some. Alright, let's see what we're working with. This huge cut, we don't want that. I'm just kind of adjusting the amount of match EQ. I selected all the points and I'm dragging a cut up so it's using the same ratio. And I'm moving the frequencies around a little bit too. Let's bypass it. That's without it. That's with it. Still a huge boost. Might be a little too much with the reverb. Alright, I'm going to take the headphones off and listen on the speakers for a second. I'll just mute my microphone so it doesn't bleed, so we can get a full listen. Maybe there is supposed to be more of that sparkly hi-hat sound. I'm hearing it more in the speakers on the reference. Maybe I won't cut so much of the highs. Excuse me. Just want to take off some of those big scoops. Let's just try like a L2. Let's hear that in the track. Still doing something weird with the phase. Yeah, I think it sounds better with the phase flipped. There's the edit. Let's throw a little reverb on that. All right, let's throw some mastering plugins on this to just get it up to like a mastered level. Can't really go wrong with Ozone, but yeah, I think we'll keep it kind of simple. I don't want to like go crazy with compression. I don't really think it needs too much, so I'll just slap Ozone on it, and with the Master Assistant. Just click Track Assistant. I just leave the settings like that and let it do its thing. Listen to this on the speakers. I just adjusted the maximizer on Ozone so it wouldn't hit quite as hard with the compressor, so it was sounding a little squishy. I want to make sure we have a lot of punch. That original recording had a lot of dynamics in it. See what our levels are looking like. I usually use FabFilter Pro L2 for like the final touch, and it's also got a really killing meter. It's got the LUFS right here. Doing a teeny touch of gain reduction here and there, 0.1 dB, hardly any. And our, what was our LUFS setting at? It's a little low. I mean, we were peaking at kind of 16. A full like pop, like loud, like radio type mix, usually in the -8 range. I know they say -14, but it's actually more like -8. I've measured a bunch of different songs to see what their actual LUFS is from the streaming service, from buying the MP3 on Amazon, iTunes, all that sort of thing. I don't know why everybody says -14. It's actually supposed to be more like -8, which is kind of what it was before the LUFS thing took over. But regardless of all that, we only have drums here, so we definitely want to leave some of the dynamics in so we don't like kill all of our transients. So I feel like -16 peak on the LUFS is going to be fine. So first things first, let's just bounce this whole thing as a loop. Figure out where the end is. We got some bleed in there, but that's okay. These break beats, we're usually just gonna, I feel like it's easier to just chop them up as a stereo file. So I'll just kind of put the mix together and then figure out which loop we want to take later. And then if we still need to mess with the stems, we can do that as well. All right, so let's bounce this. We'll just do 24-bit, 96K. We'll add the MP3, why not? Let's bounce to files. All right. We'll do it real time so we can hear it. So now we can print these one shots. We got the different velocity layers. Sorry, I forgot to turn my mic on there. Oh, my battery's exhausted. Just one moment, bear with me. All right, cool. Okay, cool. So yeah, so let's take a look at these one shots. So we have the different velocity layers of kicks. So one way to do it is to just bounce the whole thing, but it's, some of these mics are kind of noisy, so I feel like we might be better off isolating them. So for the kicks, let's just try just the kick. That first one didn't even trigger the gate. So let's add the overheads in. Let's actually bypass these drum gates for our one shots. Yeah. Maybe throw some of these rooms in there. Yeah, I think that's more the vibe. All right, so I'm just going to bounce one of these and see what it looks like. Let's give it a little space. All right, so we'll bounce this out. So this is going to be, let's call it RD kick. What do we have? 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is going to be kick 5. I just want to see what the actual waveform looks like before we go crazy setting them all up. Let's just drop this on a new track. So that's pretty good. It chops it right where I would want it. Let's hear it. Oh, it's back through our mastering again. All right, I think that'll be usable to print them like that. I'm trying to streamline this process as much as possible. So let's try kick 4. Give it a little extra space. I guess we don't need the MP3s of these. But yeah, before on that file, I was looking to make sure that the front transient of the kick came through and there wasn't any extra in the beginning, so I could load that file right into my sampler. I would love to have more of a fade out too. Oh wait, that was the wrong file name. It's gotta be kick 3. But we might be able to add that in after. Kick 2. Hear all that noise that just kind of cuts off? We don't want that. Oh wait. We can get rid of these MP3s and that. Those are the wrong file names. All right, so this is going to be kick 1. All right, so we've bounced our kicks. Snares are good. Wait, did I bounce the kicks with all of the mics on? That might be an issue. Because I wanted to have just the overheads and the kick. Yeah, I'm going to rebounce these because there was a lot of extra noise. I think it's coming from the hall mic, but I'm not really sure. Let's just rebounce them. Make sure they're clean. You can hear the other drums ringing in there too. Now I got to rename it. Here, let me close and reopen my session. All right. File name issues. I just gave it a new name. So that was kick 5. This is going to be kick 4 underscore 1. Kick 3 underscore 1. Kick 2 underscore 1. And 1 underscore 1. Great. All right, now let's unsolo the kicks and we'll solo the snares, and we left our overheads open. So RD snare 1. Snare 2. These one-shots are super useful for so many different reasons. Obviously, you could sell them as sample packs or trade them or whatever, but they're also useful if you're on a full mix or production. I mean, I personally usually would print these anytime I'm recording a live drummer on a production, because say I want to change a drum part or like add a hit here or there, take away a hit or something, instead of like having to recall the drummer in the studio and book everything again, all I need to do is just drop in the file now of this one shot. So it just gives you a lot more flexibility from a production standpoint. What's this? A few more snare hits. Snare 6. And now one of the plugins I use a lot, Slate Digital, Steven Slate Drums Trigger 2, actually has a utility where you can load your own drum hits in round robin style, which means every time it triggers a drum hit, instead of triggering the same file over and over, it will trigger at random a snare from, or whatever, from a list of drums. So basically you won't get the same hit every time, because that's kind of one of the issues with triggered drums, is that you'll get just, that machine gun sound of like the same sound over and over, and it's not super pleasant. But with a round robin, even if you're triggering just like 3 or 4 different samples and kind of randomly going in between them, you'll get a lot more variety, and that randomness will make it sound more real. Shout out to Stephen Slate, Slate Digital, who wants to hear Creating the Sound trigger round robin pack. Drop a round robin in the chat. Got a bunch of snare hits here. I guess these are more like rim shots. Call that rim 2. I'll make the last one rim 1. So that was snare 11, but we're going to make it rim 1. This will be rim 3. I guess that's a rim. Side stick. Dylan's probably going to murder me for my butchering of the names. But that's why I leave the drumming to the professionals, Okay, that's a hi-hat. So closed hi-hat. Knocked my mouse over. I guess I should probably start calling these open hi-hats at some point. Just get these samples bounced out. All right, rack tom. That's hitting the compressor. Kind of a weird hit. All right, now we're on to the floor tom. Beefy. All right, what else do we have? Not going to worry about the cymbals right this second. We'll just leave those alone for right now. But what I do want to do is load up these drum sounds in Ableton just to see what they sound like. So let's quit out of Pro Tools. Tasks that are incomplete. All right, let's see. So let me load my drum rack in Ableton. Actually, let's turn this on. Yeah. So my drum rack is right here. And let's load the kicks in. Let's set the selectors. Let's load the snares. And the side sticks and rims. Set the selectors, distribute ranges equally. Hat. We have some of those closed hi-hats. I have some open hi-hats somewhere. Right here. And I'll just make these the two toms. We'll go rack tom. Not going to worry about renaming the pads right now. And then the floor tom. I just want to like load them into the sampler and hear what these one shots sound like. All right, so all right, we have a sample rate issue. There we go. All right, so got my kick selector. Just picking some sounds real quick. That one's pretty good. Guess we'll go with that one. We can turn up the decay big time. I mean the release on these. And I can actually go copy value to siblings. So now that's all of these have the long release. All right. Now we can do finger drums if we wanted. All right, so that's kind of how we do it over here at Creating the Sound with drum mixing. So we mixed the breakbeat. We made that into a stereo file. Now we can chop that and make a loop out of it if we want. And then we mixed out the one-shots, and they seem to be working pretty well just as is in the sampler. So for an hour and a half, that's, I feel like, pretty good amount of mixing. So once again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop a comment. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for watching. It's been a pleasure creating the sound. Dylan Wissing, Cooper Anderson. Thanks a lot. We will see you all next time.